So, Starfield coming to PlayStation 5, it's claimed. Imagine there's a question mark there. Yeah, this is something that's going around. In the last couple of days, there's been a flood of rumors and speculations and proposals and things of people suggesting that Microsoft is planning to bring pretty much their entire catalog of exclusives to other platforms, not just the Switch, but potentially also to the PlayStation, which is, let's just say, igniting a bit of a fire. And people are not that thrilled, okay? It's very, very interesting. So there's been a bunch of these, okay? There's reports of them potentially bringing Gears of War, Indiana Jones, Hi-Fi Rush, Sea of Thieves, Starfield. All of these are being discussed as possibilities. Part of it is from Jeff Grubb. So, quote, the other one I've heard that's definitely under consideration, it doesn't mean that it's going to happen, but it's in talks, is Gears of War. Jeff Grubb said on Monday, Gears of War is being considered for this. Grubb also said that Microsoft was at one point planning to publicly explain its new initiative at the end of February, but that given the mounting speculation, there's a chance that an official announcement could be brought forward. Quote, the other thing I can corroborate is a rumor that there will be something at the end of February when they're going to explain this change. That is something they definitely were talking about. According to Microsoft, Gears of War had sold over 22 million units and grossed over $1 billion when the company acquired the franchise from Epic Games in 2014. Man, I bet Epic Games is wishing that they still had that. Since buying the IP, Xbox has released two mainline series entries in the form of 2016's Gears of War 4 and 2019's Gears 5. Both of which were primarily developed by the Coalition, as well as Gears of War Ultimate Edition and the turn-based tactics spin-off Gears Tactics. They said in May of 21 it was preparing to transition to next-gen development using Unreal Engine 5, but that it wasn't planning to announce any new games in the near future. And Grubb claimed last February that the Coalition had shifted its full attention to the next entry in the Gears of War series after two other games in development at the studio were canceled, which is interesting. So they're planning on bringing that. And then Xbox Era published a report also saying that Starfield will be coming to the PS5 following the quote-unquote Shattered Space expansion released on Xbox, which is scheduled for later this year. So probably like an early 2025 thing, they bring Starfield to the PS5. The report outlines that Hi-Fi Rush and Sea of Thieves will also be coming to rival platforms soon, with the announcement that Hi-Fi Rush could release as soon as Q1 of this year. It's said that a public statement from Microsoft on the news is expected this month. Xbox Era also states that Microsoft has made additional investments into PS5 dev kits to support its change in strategy. Interesting. This was something that Sony actually was very worried about during the FTC hearings for the Activision acquisition, because they were like, hey, if they own Activision and they want to be competitive with their port for these games on the PS5 for Call of Duty and stuff, they're going to need dev kits, especially like turn of console generations. They're going to need dev kits. And that's going to be tough because then they're going to have early access to our hardware, which could give them a competitive advantage in creating a console that could be more powerful than ours, you know? Because basically for the PS6, they'll send out the PS6 dev kits early to devs to prepare games for launch day or launch period. And if this were the case, Microsoft would be included in that because they own Activision. So if Activision gets it, they get access to the dev kit. And because PlayStation is not publishing games on the Xbox, they wouldn't get access to Xbox hardware. Do I think that it really matters? Sorry, this is my Warhammer camera. No, I don't think that matters because obviously Xbox hardware is just, it's not really the bread and butter. So I don't think that that's that big of a concern. Even if Xbox had an early look at the PS6, I don't think it would matter that much, just to be clear. But Windows Central's Jez Corden also weighed in on the ever-evolving rumors earlier today too by stating that he does expect Starfield to be coming to PlayStation. He said, quote, indeed, Starfield isn't new anymore, though. I expect it to be on PlayStation eventually too. And this is specifically in response to a tweet from Aldahash News. I don't know, but he posted this image, which I'm assuming is taken from like the FTC stuff and filings. I'm not sure, but, or maybe it's something he made, but it says, as shown by figure 44 below, the value from taking a title exclusive does not have a linear relationship to the popularity of the game. Stylized relationship between the value of exclusivity and size of the game. And they list some different things here. So if you look at the color on the bar, green is where it has really high value of exclusivity. So these are games that Xbox wants exclusive, at least when they are new, for the first like year or whatever. Red and yellow are games that don't benefit from exclusivity anywhere near as much, and where Xbox doesn't necessarily appeal or benefit from those games being super exclusive. So what they say for this is that Psychonauts 2, niche audience, small community, not actually that beneficial to have this exclusive. More beneficial would be to, the more beneficial thing would be to release it on multiple platforms, let that small community spread across PlayStation, Xbox, PC. Everyone gets to enjoy that game. And Microsoft still benefits because they're selling it and they make the money on the sales, right? Fallout 76, small niche community, absolutely. Allowing like PlayStation players to play and enjoy it makes more sense than keeping it super exclusive, because it's not the type of game that probably drives people to Xbox. I don't think it has that much swaying power. At the time this was put together, I think they really believed that Redfall could potentially be a console system seller, which is freaking hilarious in hindsight, but they thought that. And Starfield, this was a game that I think is still a good get. You know, I've got a lot of problems with Starfield, but I do think it was a good get as far as exclusivity is concerned. But now it's no longer that much of a seller. Like, it's out, it's a thing. Like, it's there, but I think anybody on Xbox who is going to play it has played it. And then beyond that, Call of Duty and Minecraft. These are mass market audience games, massive online community extending beyond the device, socials, merch, etc. So absolutely, these are games that are so big that keeping it exclusive doesn't necessarily benefit the same way as giving it cross-platform support. So keeping Minecraft multi-plat, keeping Call of Duty multi-plat just ends up making more sense. So the premise of all of this is that there are some games that make sense to keep exclusive and other types of games that don't. What Sony did really well in the PS4 era is that they were just pumping out these in the center. New IP or uncertain audience games, or games in such like that looked so good and reviewed so well that they really benefited from being exclusive. They brought new players into the platform. It was another reason you should get a PlayStation 4 instead of an Xbox One, because you get all of these great games. They were really, really good at that. This generation, I don't feel like they've been that good at it. God of War Ragnarok was a great get. Spider-Man 2, I think, landed a little flat compared to what they were hoping. And similarly to that would be Horizon Forbidden West. It seems like that game has just, like, nobody talks about it anymore, which is amazing. But anyway, Sony appears to have recognized this as well. Following the $3.7 billion acquisition by Sony, Bungie has confirmed that Destiny 2 will remain as a multi-platform game with full crossplay that they want to, and it cuts off. But basically, Sony agrees with this, which is why Destiny 2 is also available on other platforms and it's not exclusive, because it fits into this category over here with Call of Duty and Minecraft. So all of this to say, you know, Jez replies to that and just says, indeed, Starfield isn't new anymore, though I expect it to be on PlayStation eventually too, which I think is, I see what he's saying. It's no longer in this category. So if their plan is to go by this graph, this chart or whatever, this spectrum, it makes sense that if Starfield has drifted over here, that probably then it makes sense to put it on other platforms. Now, there are some more frustrations, I think, with the broader community as a result of all of this. There is a lot of confusion around Microsoft's strategy, where there's a community of hardware owners that feel that this is an example of Microsoft losing focus, of Microsoft not knowing what they really want to do. And there's not much communication right now. So there's just a lot of confusion more generally. Paul Tassi put together an article on Forbes, and basically the whole premise of the article is that there's a new rumor making the rounds that they're going to bring all this stuff. Yep. Hi-Fi Rush does appear to be headed to Switch and PS5 based on data mined cosmetic leaks, which is true. Even Xbox fans are trying to parse out exactly what's going on here and what Microsoft's plan for gaming is moving forward. Increasingly, it feels like it's being pulled in many, many different directions without a cohesive plan other than, quote unquote, lots of games on lots of platforms, which comes with 100 questions. First, Microsoft is very much knew that it was behind the likes of Nintendo and Sony when it came to big, high-profile first-party releases. That's why they went on a studio acquisition spree and have started to roll out big exclusives like Starfield, with others like Avowed, Perfect Dark, Indiana Jones, and Fable to come, which is true. However, with all of this, it's not going too great, but I'll go through that in just a second. But Microsoft then acquired Activision Blizzard, and a condition of that was swearing up and down that a franchise like Call of Duty would not be made exclusive to Xbox, nor does it seem I think seem that things like Overwatch or Diablo will either. But what does or does not go on Game Pass in terms of past, present, and future Activision Blizzard games is still entirely unclear, and it feels like this arm is getting special consideration Bethesda and other acquisition studios are not. Microsoft has repeatedly said that they do not put much weight into console sales, as it's simply one vector to play Xbox games. As such, they have not reported specific console sales in years, though all estimates point to them losing last generation 2-1 to Sony, and possibly this generation by the same margin, if not worse. Recently, they've announced hardware sales were lower than forecasted. The counterclaim is that Xbox Game Pass subscriptions are more important than console sales, building up the ecosystem of Xbox. This includes same-day PC launches, so you don't need to own an Xbox at all, and it can include playing on the cloud even though cloud gaming is not viable in many parts of America, specifically with poor internet, with no real ability for Microsoft to change that. But if Game Pass is more important than console sales, they have also now stopped reporting Game Pass subscription numbers since January of 2022, and the common logic is that they may be hitting a saturation ceiling. In other words, everybody that was going to be subbed or could sub to Game Pass already is. So they're just hitting the ceiling, right? Now we have this new development where Microsoft may decide to simply bring many of its games to rival platforms like PlayStation or Switch. There's no indication this will be done literally through Game Pass on those systems, but rather normal store listings. For some games, the argument is that they're multiplayer and this would help the player base, games like Grounded or Sea of Thieves. Others make less sense, like Xbox's most awarded release this year, or last year rather, Hi-Fi Rush, which will come to other platforms. Why? Many fans aren't clear on that, and it raises the question of what games are small enough to warrant this treatment, and where is the line drawn? As a mere AA game, could Avowed come to PlayStation later? Or if they don't drive enough Game Pass subs or internal sales, what about Indiana Jones, Fable, or Perfect Dark? Or in an effort to let quote-unquote more people experience the wonders of the stars, or however marketing would phrase it, what Starfield end up going to PlayStation? All of these are very valid questions, and I think the concern is warranted within the community because they're wondering, hey, I bought an Xbox, and it seems like all of the exclusive games that I have, you're now bringing to PlayStation. So what's the point of owning an Xbox? Well, it seems that what Microsoft is starting to do is transition strategies completely. For years, the assumption has been that Microsoft is going to play the game the same way that PlayStation and that Nintendo have done it. They have games that are exclusive to their platforms. If you want to play those games, you have to have their hardware, full stop. And that's not gone super great for Xbox because they've struggled with exclusives to drive people to their platform. And even then, when they have started to get exclusives, they've struggled in the review space like Starfield. And so it's clear that they can't just like assume that their next games are going to start to review super well, win Game of the Year awards, and they'll start to just rake in the dough. So they can't just assume that in the next year or two, they will start to drive console sales because they're releasing all these amazing games. It's unfortunate they can't just assume that. Maybe they eventually get there, but it feels like Sony can just be like, yeah, whenever Naughty Dog is ready to release their thing, it's going to be Game of the Year or in the running at the very, very least, right? Same with Santa Monica Studio, same with Ghost of Tsushima 2, like all these games that they have just lined up and queued up, just waiting for them to be done and released. It seems like they can rest assured that it's probably going to be received very, very well and potentially even sell consoles. Whereas Microsoft doesn't really have anything like that. Starfield, they were hoping would be that, but Starfield ended up, I would say there were a lot of red flags to suggest it was not going to be considered a masterpiece. But when Starfield came out, it ended up being met with kind of conflicting reception. Even the hardest core fans had some problems with it. So I think Xbox now is like, we can either keep playing the exclusivity game and hope that we figure it out in a year or two and we start to get really consistently awesome games, or we shift gears a little bit more now. And it seems they're going with the latter. And what that looks like is that they are going to shift approach into not playing the game Sony and Nintendo play, but rather doing the Microsoft game. And Microsoft, as a company, they are built around software distribution. That's what they do. They sell other things like the Surface tablets. For a while, they sold a Windows Phone. They sold all these other things. But hardware has never been their bread and butter. What makes Xbox, or rather Microsoft, successful is distributing software to the masses and getting a cut of it every step along the way. That's why they're a $3 trillion company, because they're the best at it, right? So they're going to approach this in a different way, where now, instead of trying to sell you a console or a box of plastic and silicon that you then buy games for and play them on that box, they're going to say, get whatever box you want. Because we're just going for volume of software. We don't really care that much about the hardware. And it very well could work. Because like this is the big thing for Xbox fans to just remember. What they've been doing for decades, like 2 decades at this point, has not worked. Okay. They've lost to PlayStation and to Nintendo the console war of hardware. So instead, they're going more for the brand war instead. So am I going to buy an Xbox? You don't need to. If you want to, go for it. If you prefer the Xbox ecosystem, if you prefer that stuff, you can. But their whole strategy, they don't give a crap if you buy this box or if you're playing on this box or if you're playing, it's behind this, on the PlayStation box or whatever. They don't care. Or even if you're on your phone using the xCloud, they don't care because they make their money through the software. That's where they make most of their money in the bread and butter. It's like, but now I have no reason to buy an Xbox. Yeah. So that's not, they don't care. It's just purely a matter of selling software. Selling software, there's no margin on distribution. It's just selling it through their platforms. If they can get you signed up for their subscription service so that you pay in $15 every single month, that's just how it works. That's just how it works. Maybe in a year or two, they transition and start to make some of those real big exclusives that end up selling really, really well. Or maybe they just review really well. Maybe they keep those exclusive. And then if it's not like a big heavy hitter with amazing review scores, they just keep it, you know, and they go like kind of business as usual. But with all of this, I just think, I understand people are frustrated, but you just have to realize like Microsoft executives are looking at it and they're like, so what you've been doing with the Xbox is not working. That's not selling. People don't care. 2 generations now, you've been outsold 2 to 1, if not worse. And Game Pass subscription growth is extremely minimal, if not completely non-existent. Do something different because what you're doing is not working. And if something that you're doing is not working, you have to try something else. And what they're going to try, seemingly, is what they've done for their corporate side of things, for their commercial and industrial side of things. And that's just distribute software. Who cares about the hardware? If you buy our hardware, sure, great, whatever. If you buy a Surface laptop, whatever. But if you want Windows, you can get Windows on a Lenovo, on an MSI, on a, what's another, Dell? I'm trying to think of other laptop or computer manufacturers. But you can buy whatever hardware you want, but Microsoft still makes money because you bought the software. That's the key. That's the key. Everybody's like, oh, so they're just going to lose out on the consoles. Yeah, they already are. They already lost that fight. So they're going to try to create a new fight, basically, which is to just sell all of these games everywhere. They're like, yeah, we're going to release games on PlayStation. Because if you buy it, yeah, PlayStation makes 30%. We make the other 70%. So we're happy. You know, it's really not that difficult to grasp. But a lot of people who are more hardcore Xbox fans, they feel like this is a betrayal. They feel like they bought into an ecosystem that now is being opened up to everybody. And on the one hand, like, I can understand the feeling of being told, or at least believing, that this was going to be exclusive. And then when it's not, you feel, or when it's made broader and distributed elsewhere, you feel as though, you know, something's been taken from you. I can understand that emotion and that feeling. However, it seems like Xbox is still going to keep these games exclusive for a while, probably like a year to 2 years. So it doesn't seem like they're going to just do Xbox, PlayStation, and PC, and Game Pass, whatever, xCloud releases all at the same time. It looks like they're doing things very similarly to PlayStation. And this is the other thing. It's like they're coming out and just being like, straight up, it's opened up. We released it on Game Pass. Everybody who was going to play it on Game Pass played it. So now we are going to open it up to PlayStation fans if they want to play it, whatever. And that's what Sony does. Is Sony releases their games, they sit on it for a year or two, and then they bring it to PC. Easy money. Like, it just makes sense because the people playing it on PC, if they have a PlayStation, they're probably buying it twice to see if they can make it look even better and run even better than, you know, it would have run on the PlayStation 5 when they played it the first time. And there's a lot of people who only have PlayStation 5s and now are going to benefit from both. So I understand the initial feelings, the gut feelings, but I do think that it's a little silly to be like, this is a total betrayal and I feel lied to and this is all madness and this and that. It's like, it's really not that big of a deal, I think. I think Starfield is exclusive through, they're exclusive through probably the end of this year, and then they move on. Yeah, officially breaking. Microsoft to share details on bringing Xbox games to PlayStation next week. They moved up an important business update to address fan concerns. They were going to do it at the end of February. They're doing it now. Microsoft explained, share details about its plans to bring Hi-Fi Rush and other Xbox exclusives to PS5 and Nintendo Switch consoles, according to a source familiar with Microsoft's plans. Details of Microsoft's multi-platform plans have been gradually leaking. The Verge revealing over the weekend that the upcoming Indiana Jones game is being considered for PS5. Now Microsoft is getting ready to outline the future of Xbox next week after a weekend of leaks and uncertainty for Xbox fans. We're listening to you and we hear you, says Microsoft Gaming CEO Phil Spencer in a post to X. We've been planning a business update event for next week where we look forward to sharing more details with you about our vision for the future of Xbox. Stay tuned. We're listening and we hear you. It seems like most hardcore Xbox fans just want them to backtrack and keep everything exclusive. I don't think Xbox is going to do that. If they were going to do that, I think he would have been like, we're going to address these false rumors or something. I think he would do something like that to quell the concerns. So I see this and it sounds to me like it's true. And they're just going to explain why it's true. We're told Microsoft was originally planning this update for later this month alongside an announcement for Hi-Fi Rush and for PS5 and Switch. After speculation around Hi-Fi Rush, Starfield, and other Xbox games coming to PS5 and testified over the weekend, Microsoft has moved up its announcement, and Datamine Game Assets hinted at a release of Hi-Fi Rush for the PS5 and the Switch. Yeah. And they're also probably bringing Sea of Thieves. It's going to be a cause for a lot of drama, but I think they're going to do it and people will get used to it, and then it's just, it is what it is. Hey, Corey, if they're doing a press event to share the details, yes, multiple games are going multi-platform. Otherwise, they would have just said not happening to the rumors. Hell, even if certain games aren't going multiplayer, quick press release would suffice. Yeah, I think they're going to explain fully what they're doing. Now, or no way they'll announce exiting the console market. I don't think they're exiting the console market. I think they're just straight up bringing things to the other platforms after a certain period of time. So 2024, Microsoft releases Xbox games, PlayStation making an exit to the hardware console market. Sony becomes a monopoly in the console game market. It's great. I don't know what they're saying. It doesn't make any sense. Going to be interesting to see how Microsoft frames this. No doubt it brings in more sales for these titles, but it's going to make those consoles more irrelevant than they already are. The inflection point will be the tentpole franchises, Halo, Gears, Forza, make it to platforms that aren't Windows or Xbox. And the PS6 sells for $1,000 because there's no competition. That is definitely a bad thing. Yeah, I think it's fair if they completely exit the console market. Already, it seems like PlayStation's totally unconcerned with Xbox, though. I think they could have launched the PlayStation 5 at $600, and even with the Series X at $5, I don't think it would have outsold the PlayStation. The Series S has been around as a cheaper version of the console that can play all the same games, granted at lower fidelity, but can still play all the games. And even then, they weren't able to outcompete the PlayStation 5. So I don't think PlayStation has been that concerned. And with a lot of this, like if they price it at $1,000, it might sell gangbusters. It might also not sell anything at all because people don't think it's worth that. The market will kind of adjust freely. I think more competition is better, but it's just been very clear that Xbox can't seemingly figure out how to make people buy their boxes. So I like, if I were them, if I were running Xbox, what I would do is I would just ride this out for a couple of years and push for high Metacritic score games that are contenders for like Game of the Year, and give studios time and expertise and all that to polish up games, get them across the finish line, get them to journalists and get them hyped up. Do that, then you'll start to see probably next generation the chance to find some traction gained and start to climb up the mountain a little bit, recapturing some of that market share. But I understand that that's like a 2, 3, 4 year process to try and dig themselves a little higher out of the pit they're in right now. And they might just not think that that is viable. They might be being told by executives and investors and stuff like, hey, no, you got to figure this out now. We just let you buy a company for $70 billion for your gaming division. And we're not seeing any record-breaking profits or anything. So what are we doing? What are we doing? I just think Xbox finally is at a point where they're like, hey, what we've been doing for years is not working. We are consistently losing this. We have to do something very different. because they're not going to beat PlayStation at their own game. They just apparently can't do it. They've been trying for years and they can't do it. So, you know, even when they have studios that they give a lot of time, ridiculous amounts of time and tons of money, they release like Halo Infinite that does pretty well with reviews and then is like promptly forgotten and moved on from. Whereas PlayStation just casually drops like The Last of Us Part 2 and God of War Ragnarok and Spider-Man and like all of these Ghost of Tsushima, all these amazing games that people are still talking about today, years and years later. And they just do it like it's nothing. Like it's no big deal. They can keep Starfield. We don't want it. That's funny, Larry. That's why I actually don't think that it sells many copies if it goes to PlayStation, but especially because a lot of PlayStation fans were bashing on Starfield for a while. And so now that it would be coming to their platform, I don't think it would do that well, but they just need to concentrate on making good games. The thing is, like, it's not like they've been trying to make bad games, okay? It's like Starfield, they gave extra time, extra budgets. They gave apparently a bunch of Microsoft resources for polishing and QA. Like, they gave Starfield every tool to be successful, and it still launched to mixed reviews. Like, it's just frankly not that easy to make a Game of the Year contender. It's believe it or not, very difficult. So with this, it's just, they've been trying for a long time and they just can't seemingly figure it out. And I think part of it is, you know, it's an age-old culture thing within PlayStation. They have very carefully calibrated and picked out which studios they want. And they have some amazingly talented leadership that knows a winner game when they see it. And they can offer feedback and tweak it and get it where it needs to be a Game of the Year contender. And I just don't think that Xbox has been able to establish the same kind of mid-level and upper-level management to spot those winners consistently. Stands up. I enjoyed Starfield. I just don't think they know what good games are. Phil thought Redfall was going to review in the 80s. I don't think it was just Phil. I think the whole of Xbox's leadership was apparently on board for that perception. They thought it was like high 80s, according to those emails. Like, I know he's a hardcore gamer. I don't think he's like playtesting a ton of stuff. I think when one of his employees tells him, yeah, we're expecting this, we did some surveys, we think it reviews in the 80s, I think he honestly thought that that's what it was. And apparently with Redfall, there was all sorts of crap where, like, I think what was happening is that they were sending people to go and playtest. And the playtesters were going through and they asked them, what would you score this out of 10 if you had to review it today? And they were given small vertical sections like this to play and try. And then they were asked, what do you think of it? And then they would score it accordingly. And the studio was keeping the broken sections very, very well hidden. They were only showcasing the sections that were working properly, which were few and far between. And they also probably were telling the people reviewing this thing, like, hey, if you run across an AI bug or a pop-in bug and things like that, we have fixes in the works. So don't factor that into your score because our plan is to have all of that fixed by launch. So you won't have to worry about it. So then they go, okay, well, assuming the bugs are fixed, assuming it runs really good, assuming all of this other stuff that you've said you're going to take care of that you didn't end up taking care of, assuming all of that, then like an 8 out of 10. And honestly, like Redfall, if you look at the game and you're like, okay, without any technical issues, no bugs, if you have questing that actually works properly, if everything is working, it probably gets closer to like a 7 out of 10. It's fine, maybe even good, but it's pretty far off from that. I mean, to this day, it's still pretty broken. Even here, like in this preview event, you can see, look at the bicycle tire. They kind of keep it hidden, kind of tucked away, but you see that? That's closer to a triangle than it is to a circle. So, like, there's a lot of little stuff in here where they're doing preview events and tests and play tests and things, and they're asking people to just be like, okay, well, assuming that this figures itself out and that we fix these problems, what would you score it? And that's how I think they got at the 8 out of 10 number. They just didn't realize, I guess, what they'd actually be able to fix, or maybe right before launch, they ended up with something that broke something else. Like, it just seems like there was some issue with Redfall where they just had a series of things break and they couldn't figure out how to fix it before it was too late, unfortunately for them. But it's still kind of busted. He took my thing.